Candidates interested in serving on the NYDA board are currently being interviewed by Parliament. Several high-profile names have raised their hands to fill the 7 vacancies following the expiry of the term of the previous board in May. The NYDA is tasked with tackling issues of youth unemployment, among others. But what exactly has the organization, the impact that they've had, particularly under COVID-19? We're joined by the agency CEO, Waseem Carrim. Waseem, good evening and thank you so much for your time tonight. I suppose one of the most unfortunate things for the NYDA is that it has never really been able to shake the perception of some of the issues that had been plaguing the institution several years back, and it being seen as an agency where those who are politically connected are basically shifted to in order to be guaranteed jobs for whatever work they're doing within the political space.
Yes, thanks so much, Kathy, and good evening to you and good evening to the viewers as well. I think, of course, the perception of what would have been the start of the NYDA and the World Festival for Youth Development has stayed with the organization, in spite of numerous achievements, which include 5 consecutive clean audits from the Auditor General of South Africa, consistent performance, policy direction. Unfortunately, many media institutions and other parties tend to continue to focus on the negatives associated with the organization. But I think, the NYDA is doing its best to put itself across as a transparent and fair organization. There's always this perception that is put across that in order to qualify for a grant or a service from the NYDA, one must be connected to a politically affiliated organization, which is not true at all. Even to get a job within the agency, there is no such thing that needs to happen. And we've been transparent before COVID, through the pandemic, in publishing our beneficiaries on our website so that anybody can get in touch with them, understand what their application process was, where they come from, so that we are transparent and fair in everything we do as an organization.
What kind of work have you been doing under COVID-19 that specifically relates to young people? Because we also know that they are among the hardest hit when it comes to the impact of this pandemic. Yeah,
thanks. So, the one area we realized quite early in the pandemic was that although so much relief or a lot of relief had been set up for small businesses, those kind of micro businesses, youth-owned enterprises, young people running their own gyms or hair salons, largely didn't qualify for much of the support that was being provided. And we set up the Youth Enterprise Micro Relief Fund, which was kind of a once-off grant to support youth-owned enterprises to make it through the lockdown, subsidize their losses and make sure they could stay on their feet. And to date, we've approved about 963 beneficiaries on that program. Close to 10 million rand has been invested by NYDA into the program. We know many young people in the labor market face challenges in claiming their UIF. We've been providing them direction, connecting them with the unemployment insurance fund so they can claim their TERS benefits, so that they continue to earn an income through the pandemic. I think also, if you know, SONA 2020, even before the pandemic, focused a lot on youth unemployment. And even though COVID-19 has changed or forced change to some of our plans, it hasn't changed the commitment to put young people to work.
And of course, of those 900, what was the total number of applications for assistance that you had received?
Yeah, so it was just overwhelming, Kathy. Over 7,000 to 8,000 applications was received, for the relief fund, which kind of tells you the need that is out there for small businesses, the kind of distress they're under, especially those micro enterprises, which really don't have many places to turn to. Yeah? And they typically employ 1 or 2 people, so the knock-on effect on jobs is massive. Yeah? We've been fortunate in that both the KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga provincial governments have come on board to add additional funding to that fund, and that has allowed us to boost it. But really, the need out there is massive. Yeah? And I think
then how
that's
do you
largely
advocate?
why the economy is more.
Sure. How do you advocate for support for these programs? Because ultimately, in many ways, you are seen as an institution that is supposed to represent the youth voice in the country. And how do you ensure that even in a crisis like this, where you don't necessarily have the funds to meet the need that has been created, you are making sure that the presidency is aware of the complaints, and that you're also holding some of the holding government to account in as far as the plans that they're then announcing, that there must be intent, that of X amount of money that has been set aside, there must be commitment that a significant portion of it will address and will go to young people, because these are the people who are also facing the highest unemployment rate in the country. We've seen the impact of COVID-19 on schooling, etc. It's young people, it's their lives that are in complete disarray right now.
Yeah, 100%, Kathy. And I think, I think it's important to state up front that a democratic South Africa has not necessarily done right by its young people. Yeah? Even before the pandemic, we had the highest youth unemployment rate in the world. Yeah? And that really is a shame on our democracy. I know, for one, that President Ramaphosa and the presidency is committed to young people, and particularly this issue of youth unemployment. Yeah? I think you've seen that most of the funds that were established have set aside for vulnerable groups, amongst them youth, persons with disabilities. I think you've seen also in the rollout, particularly in the higher education sector, of laptops, free data for students. Although faced with its own challenges, there has been a commitment towards supporting young people with learning during and through the pandemic. I think equally the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, which represents government's ambitious plan to change the face of unemployment for young people, was flagged for budget in the emergency budget of the Minister of Finance, which shows its commitment to be rolled out, and that it hasn't been put on the back burner with other priorities put in front of it.
Waseem, what I'm not getting is a sense that the NYDA is part of leading this conversation.
Well, I would say we are definitely leading this conversation, Kathy. I think the fact that youth unemployment occupied such a sufficient space in the state of the nation, that it continues to be the one issue that is put at the forefront of every policy speech that is being made around unemployment and job creation, advocates for the work that the NYDA has been doing, advocates for the lobbying work that we have been doing as an organization to say that youth unemployment needs to be taken seriously by this country.
Sorry to interject there, Waseem. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that youth unemployment is a big problem for this country. Stats SA tells us that. So whichever way you look at it, these are things that would be on the agenda anyway. But I'm not getting a clear sense of the kind of things that you have pushed for directly that have had a response in the way that they've needed to. So perhaps give me examples of the way in which you have been leading the conversation and what the interventions have been after this lobbying that you're talking about.
So if we look at youth unemployment, or we look at unemployment in South Africa, it is both systematic and structural. If we had to decide what were the two big issues that cause unemployment in South Africa, on the one end, it's the fact that we have an education system that doesn't necessarily produce the right skills for the economy. Number two, we have an economy that for the last 10 years has not been growing at a pace sufficient enough to absorb the amount of labor that's available in that economy. Now, to fix those two systematic issues will take time that young people do not necessarily have. Yeah? And working together with social partners, working together with the presidency, that would have culminated in the State of the Nation 2020, announcing a policy direction that does not say young people need time to be able to solve this problem. The Youth Employment Intervention is, as I mentioned, one of the most bold and comprehensive plans to tackle youth unemployment, saying that young people cannot be expected to wait for changes in the economy or changes in the education system. Two, a program is only a program until it's funded. Yeah? And that program being funded by the Minister of Finance, 6 billion in this year, 19 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework, tells you that there's a commitment to support young people through a multi-pronged strategy, recognizing that young people are not homogeneous in their nature, that they require support with finding employment, that youth service forms a component of it, that self-employment and workplace experience is also an important part of it. So it's a multi-pronged hybrid strategy put together with many social partners, including the NYDA.